everyone from the team. And thank you to Mudit, Devashish, Pooja, and Harsh for accepting our request to join the program. Today we have a diverse panel on to speak more on the IP and also in terms of understanding how this plays a very important role when it comes to consider it as an asset for incubator as well. We'll be talking more on this, since we have a diverse panel from both technical front as well as in terms of considering the national one. We have Jaiko as well with us, with having more than a century of experience in this field. They will be getting more insight on this. So I'm really thanks for you all guys. So today we are having this session as part of our Startup September, which is again for the ecosystem, by the ecosystem, and to build more on content, more on the information, which definitely will be helping our incubators as well as startup to support that. So I'll be handing over session to Mudit, you, and thank you once again for taking this up. Over to you.
Thank you, Mukesh, for having me here. Glad to be a part of this a diverse panel on a very interesting and very important topic, specifically if we consider the ecosystem, and the main key player in the overall ecosystem is startups. So this is a very relevant topic. So thank you for inviting me here. When it comes to startup, patents and trademarks are two most significant IP which attracts them. And perhaps today incubators also play a very vital role by bringing resources, professional services for startups to avail and to protect the technological innovations and business ideas. So today, for discussing all of these things, we have three distinguished guests with us, including Mrs. Pooja, an expert at ITTO, FITT, IIT Delhi, serving as a chief manager. Mr. Harish Pangi, founder at IP5, and Mr. Devashish Kundu, head of business development at Zeco, one of the oldest IP firm with an experience of more than 150 years. So the overall flow of today's session is we will be having 10 minutes of presentation from each speaker, followed by 5 minutes of question. And then at the end, 30 minutes of panel discussion, come a fireside chat, followed by a thank you note. So I will be starting today's session with Mr. Harsh. A brief introduction about Mr. Harsh Pangi is Harsh focuses and provides consulting on many aspects of intellectual property. He is a founder of IP5 and IP consulting firm. Harsh was instrumental in obtaining successful patent grants in multiple high-tech and emerging technologies with a global intellectual property group at SAP SE. He also licensed and worked in collaborations with the litigation group, the strategic IP initiative group, and the global technology legal compliance group to provide his expertise on different projects as needed. Harsh is registered to practice as a patent agent with an Indian patent office and holds a Master of Science degree in electrical engineering from New York. Welcome, Harsh, to this session, and over to you for a 10-minute talk.
Thank you, Mudit. Thank you for that warm introduction, and thank you at Start Network team for providing me this opportunity to speak on the topic of IP. I hope post presentation and discussion, the attendees will get to learn something new and will be able to leverage on it. So that I would like to just share my screen and start the presentation. All right. So the topic of presentation is intellectual property, basics and strategy. So we'll begin the discussion with the definition of what intellectual property is. So creations of mind is referred to as intellectual property. So whatever your mind is able to conceive or create is in intangible form. So it can be in the form of ideas or inventions that can be protected through what is known as patents, expressions, books, paintings that can be protected through what is known as copyright, songs, symbols, names, images, and designs that can be protected through trademark and industrial design. So whenever one procures a right to this intangible asset, it becomes an intellectual property right. So that is when you can actually get protection and enforce it as well. So there are different types of intellectual property. Since our mind is capable of conceiving different types of creations, we have different types of intellectual property to protect them. So broadly, they include patent, trademark, copyright, trade secret, and industrial design. So I'll just walk you through what each type of intellectual property protects, right? So patent provides protection or monopoly to a technical solution for a problem. So you have a problem and you may have one or more technical solutions for it. So you can get a protection or monopoly for the technical solution by filing a patent application. When it comes to brands, right, which can include names, expressions, logos, they can be protected by what is known as trademark. So expressions, which can be in the form of, let's say, poem, books, literature, art, can be protected through copyright. So trade secrets is one topic that is closely related to what is called what we discussed about patents. So trade secret protects nothing but compilation of information, which can include your customer list, your method, your processes, internal processes, the way you operate. It can include algorithms. It can include, let's say, compositions. So all these can form a part of a trade secret. So any compilation of information that has some economic value and edge, which can give you an edge over the competition, can be referred to as trade secret. So the onus lies on the owner to keep the information a secret. So that is one challenge when it comes to trade secret, which is why we have alternate form in the form of patents to protect your ideas. So industrial design is another type of intellectual property that provides protection to designs. And when I say designs, it includes shapes, colors, and combinations of these. So design, industrial design doesn't provide protection to design of a system or design of a circuit. So yeah, a lot of time I come across inventors who come up with queries saying that we have design of a system and we would like to protect that. Of course, there is patent, or what is also referred to as a utility patent, to protect it, but then you cannot protect it through industrial design. So having learned the basics, I will directly jump into what an IP strategy is. This is a huge jump from basics, which covers definitions, to directly to strategy. So basic definition of strategy is a plan of action with a purpose. So the idea of creating IP strategy is to be able to protect your assets, timely protect your assets, and also leverage on it. So how you can do it? You can identify your IPs. So based on the nature of your company, so whatever your company does or whatever your venture does, right? There are different types of IPs associated with it. So you need to evaluate your assets, decide on the type of protection you need. So we just learned about the different types of intellectual property that exist, right? That can provide you protection in different ways. So you can build a portfolio with time. So the maturity comes only when you have a sizable amount of portfolio. So once you have matured as an entity or as a organization and have timely protected your assets, you will be able to build a portfolio and also leverage it through licensing or commercialization. So continuing our discussion on strategy, how can the strategy be implemented, right? So there are few basic steps that one needs to follow to implement an IP strategy. First step is to identify. So if you are a technology company, let's say, there will be various assets and you will need different forms of protection. So let's say you are building a product or a solution that can be protected via a patent, right? The name of your company or the brand or the logo, it can be protected via a trademark. Then there may be certain processes, customer lists, internal, let's say internal arrangements between employees, the way processes are executed, the way you run your company, those can be protected through trade secrets. So you will need to actually sign NDAs to get protection of trade secret. So in India, to get protection for trade secret, you will need to enter into a contract or an agreement. So this is very important. So unless you have a contract or an agreement in written form and signed by the parties involved, you will not be able to one, maintain the information as a trade secret. Two, if you lose it, you will not be able to enforce. So you have to be very mindful about this. And the last form of protection is copyright. So copyright can be any content which can be in the form of presentations that you deliver to your customers, or let's say your content on the website that can be copyrighted. So if you're a software or a technology company, probably you could also consider copywriting your software code and database design. These are all copyrighted. So this is the most important step. First is identifying. Second is planning, right? So you need to engage with the IP professional very early on. And this is very, very important for any kind of startup or any organization, right? Whoever, let it be academic or in the industry, whoever wants to protect their IP and want to leverage on it, engagement and the time of engagement is the key differentiator, right? A lot of times I've seen startups lack on this. They wait to get either funded or they wait for some event to happen, right? Before they can shift or focus their attention to IP. So this can be detrimental for the startup in the long run. And I've seen N number of startups losing their IP because they have not engaged or have not been able to engage or timely act on protecting their IP. And also what and where aspects. So we just discussed about identifying, right? You need to first identify what are your IP assets, what are the forms of protection that you can get, and how to get it and where to get protection. So this is very, very important. When you're looking to scale up globally, you should have a global strategy. So I will cover a little bit about the global strategy aspect in the budgeting part of it, which is the next step. So one needs to have the budget to protect the IP. And this again, right? Many times, many startups have this question mark. What is the point of filing the IP when our neighboring nation is ready to copy it and replicate it? So I had been thinking about this for quite some time. And interestingly, last year, there was an article that I came across where a lot of countries were blaming China for copying their products, right? Or replicating or building identical solutions. So they had a very, very simple answer. And I think that answers, that kind of logically covers everything. If you think that, your product or your solution is IP worthy, you say, come and file it in China as well. We will respect it. So if you're not filing in China, we are free to use it. So IP being a territorial or a jurisdictional right? Jurisdictional asset, I think what they stand and where they stand, they're perfectly right. So if you're not going to file in China, you don't have the budget to file in China, they have the freedom to just go ahead and copy and replicate and build the product within their jurisdiction and then market it, right? The next is step of execution. So this is very, very important. Again, I've seen a lot of startups are on a back foot when it comes to execution. They have the budget, they have the plan, they have identified their assets, they know where they want to file, what they want to file. But then when it comes to step of execution, they are again slow to act. So you need to get into action very quickly. So just to give you an example, the numbers that I'm going to share you are from 2019. So there were some close to 50,000 odd applications that were received by the Indian Patent Office. And there were 1.5 million patent applications that were received by the Chinese Patent Office. So just, I'm just comparing the statistics of the neighboring country. So this clearly demonstrates that you cannot wait perpetually. And if you think that, you can still wait and get your IP, this is not true, right? Whoever acts first, whoever is able to file first, will be able to leverage on it. And this is applicable not only in India, but across the world. So you need to have a proper plan and also need to budget it. There are various schemes available when it comes to budgeting, right? You can avail loans and budget and file. And once they are granted, you can use these schemes and try to get reimbursements. So MSME is one such scheme in India, which provides a reimbursement of expenditure towards patents and trademarks and geographical indications. So patents for anything that is filed in India, you get a reimbursement of up to 1 lakh rupees, and then anything that is filed outside and gets granted, you can get up to 5 lakh reimbursement. And the last one, value and leverage, quality versus quantity. So this again is a differentiator. So I see that, European and US, right, the North American continent on the whole and the European continent on the whole, lays emphasis on very high quality applications. So as a startup, you should be willing and ready to invest that money, right? Don't look at filing something frivolous, something which is incomplete, which you will not be able to derive any value of or leverage in future, right? Many of them think that once the patent is granted, you are sitting on a gold mine. So this is not true. There are hundreds and thousands of patents that get granted in countries like US, right, and few European countries. That doesn't mean anything. So what actually means is, what actually gets licensed or commercialized is if you have a quality application and, let's say, quality content and broad claims. Claims define the scope of your invention, right, when you file an application. So if the patent application meets the quality standards, then you'll be able to leverage and derive value from it. So taking all these steps, and I would like to take these steps, IP strategy, how large companies or MNCs actually implement this. So coming from having worked with SAP for last 8 odd years, what I have understood is there are again different groups which work on specific tasks. So as a startup, of course, you cannot have this leverage, but then you can have at least one person or maybe a small team of maybe 2 or 3 people who can wear different hats, right? Of identifying, planning, budgeting, executing, and being able to leverage through commercialization. So I'll just take the example of SAP and explain how this strategy is actually implemented. So typically we have something called as an invention management platform where the inventors, who are nothing but the employees of the company, whoever is working on something, they put together the information and submit the invention disclosure. So once the disclosure is filed, it goes to a global team, and then based on the line of business. And when I say line of business, SAP being a large company, they have diversified and created different lines of business. To give you examples, it can be database, mobile, ERP, right? So these are lines of business. So your disclosure would be assigned to one of the group, and the attorney starts working on the disclosure form. So invention disclosure form is evaluated, and then they decide whether to proceed with the filing application or not. Before even deciding whether to go with filing or not, a patent search is done. So this is very, very important. Very important step that most of the startups ignore, or they don't have budget. So a lot of times whenever I'm trying to startup, I advise them, please get a patent search done, or have some budget to get a proper patent search done, right? That will give you an insight of what is out there, and where you should file, where you shouldn't file, where you should actually position, and how you should position your stand when it comes to filing the patent application. So again, lack of budget, many other constraints, startups are not willing to do that, and that it can mislead or misfire at a later stage. So once you get an examination report, you will have clarity. So the idea of doing a patent search is to get that search examination report before even you file the patent application. So yeah, this is the typical strategy that MNCs work with. So they do a patent search, and then they decide whether to proceed or close the case. Once they decide to proceed, they will identify the jurisdictions in which they want to file. So typically they will have a strategy where they want to first file in jurisdictions like US, a few countries in Europe, probably India and China, and then go ahead with filing the process. So moving on with the presentation. So talking about how IP can leverage to incubators, or what incubators should really focus on. So should focus on spreading IP awareness. So this is very, very important. It's not only restricted to basics of IP, but then there are various topics on IP which should be covered. For example, open source is one more topic that is closely related to technology companies, right? A lot of technology companies rely or use on open source software. So a lot of these open source softwares or codes are attached with licenses, and licenses are having terms. So these licenses can be restrictive or permissive in nature, and it can affect your IP in the near future. So you should be mindful about the kind of code that you are going to use, where you're going to use, how you're going to use. You should have some clarity, or if you don't have that clarity, at least you should get in touch with a professional who can help you with it. So second thing is having processes and policies. So incubators can have internal processes for evaluations and policies on how the IP would be evaluated, and whether there would be like a joint ownership of the IP, let's say between the startup and the incubation center. This model doesn't exist in India, to the best of my knowledge. Only when it comes to academic institutions, or if you're working in a corporate environment, they have policies where the IP gets assigned to the corporate or the academic institute. There has been no instance of joint ownership, but then that is one more area that you can explore. So, and when it comes to joint ownership, everything gets shared, right? Not only the cost. Let's say if it becomes a commercial success, you will make money, but then if it gets litigated, the liabilities that would come along with it also would get shared. So one should be mindful in addressing all these aspects when you're drafting the policies. So IP strategy, we briefly touched upon this in the previous two slides, what, when, where, and how. I would advise the incubators to educate the startups on having a proper IP strategy and also a budget for it, right? And the last part is the commercialization or the technology transfer. I think we have a panel member who is an expert on this topic, and I would leave this topic to her, as she will be able to provide better insights on how the commercialization and technology transfer aspects work in India. I have worked on this topic in the US, where I was studying. So I was a part of the technology transfer office, where all the research that was conducted at the university used to come to our tech transfer office, and we have worked on licensing projects. So I'm familiar with the topic, but then I would want a fellow panel member Pooja to speak on this more. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation and open up the floor for questions. Thank you.
It is a very insightful presentation, Mr. Harsh. Quite a lot of things that even I have noticed, and I have jotted down for myself also, being a startup founder. There are some questions that are there for you. Specifically, is one of the question is also there in the chat box. I would also request all the all the attendees to actively contribute your questions into the chat box for all the panelists, so that we can address all of your questions as well. But to start with, the first question to you, Mr. Harsh, is you have been a mentor at various notable organizations like Link, Wadhwani Foundation, Founder Institute of Inspiring Innovation, and many more. So what are some of the challenges you feel startup face these days when it comes to due diligence part? So due diligence is something which startups in the initial days avoid facing all of these things, and that's why probably the filing rate was significantly low in India. So can you throw some light on this question specifically?
Sure. It's a good question, and then I'll just share my experiences, what I have come across. So biggest challenge, I think, what startups face is, one is lack of awareness, and the second is having a sound strategy, right? So that is the reason, when Mukesh ji actually approached me saying, can you be a panel member and talk on, come and talk on this topic, I thought, what should I present? The topic that will be useful to startups as well as incubators or any stakeholder who would be participating in the event. So these are the two things that I thought, maybe touching upon these can help. One is lack of IP awareness and having strategy. So awareness, when it comes to awareness, we just discussed the different types of IPs, right? Where I covered patent, trademark, copyright, design, industrial design, as well as trade secret and trademark. So each of this, right, is designed to protect different types of creations. So I have come across instances where a startup comes and says, I have a technical solution, I want to copyright it. I ask them, why do you want to copyright it, right? This is a clear gap in understanding how the process actually works when it comes to copyright as well as patenting. So this needs to be addressed, the gap in understanding as to what form of protection each type of IP provides, and whether you should be filing a patent or a copyright or a trademark. That clarity the startups should have, right? And when it comes to strategy, we discussed various steps, right? Identifying, planning, budgeting, execution. So briefly, again, I'll touch trade secrets. Again, between co-founders, there are trade secrets which they don't pay attention to till they enter a stage where they want to separate out, or when the company wants to split. So there is no agreement or contract between the co-founders there are no agreements and contracts between employees and the company or the founders. So this can again act detrimentally. So one needs to pay attention to that. Then trademarking or protecting the brand of the company. This again, some of them have it in their strategy, some of them don't. Only when identical brand providing identical services surfaces up in the market, that is when they realize that they have to protect their brand, and then they try to file a trademark. So when it comes to patents, again, it's been a mixed experience. Like I said, I've worked with customers where they didn't even want to launch a website before they filed a bunch of patents, and then there is other side of the spectrum where people have been there in business and trying to protect their assets at this point.
Yes. The major question and the major point that arises from your overall talk is the lack of awareness. People are a bit skeptic to adopt all of this thing. So many questions in their head, but if we consider it into a reality, it is not so much complicated as it is general in a general view.
Right.
There is one question in the chat box from one of the panelists or one of the attendees is, if we file a patent in China based on the Chinese government tech policy, it becomes state property, or at least state have access to our data or tech. Is it not?
No, state will not have access to data. See, when you're filing a patent, you are not filing how you're implementing it, right? Patent application is not about implementation, but the solution. The functional and operational aspects of your solution is what you're filing. They cannot, once it is filed, they are not going to take and build it, right? You can always go back and challenge them saying that we already have filed for an IP in your jurisdiction to seek or to get protection. The government will not take your, so going by this logic, every country that you file, even India can do it, right? If you file a patent application in India, Indian government also can take and use your information and data, right? So that logic doesn't work that way, right? Patent is something that you file to get protection, and you're not actually giving out any data or information that the government would be able to leverage on.
Okay, got that, Mr. Harsh. Probably we'll also take some of your questions related to you in the later point of time at the time of panel discussion.
Sure.
Next, we have Mrs. Pooja Bhatia as a speaker. Pooja is a Chief Manager at Innovation Technology Transfer Office, ITTO, which is FITT, IIT Delhi. She is an experienced IP and licensing professional, certified licensing professional, and a registered technology transfer professional with a demonstrated history of working in life science domain, with a Master of Business Administration focused in technology management from National Law University, Jodhpur. So welcome, Pooja, to this session. We would like to hear from you the specific initial words about what exactly IP and technology transfer is, and then probably we'll ask some questions to you. Over to you, please.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Mudit, and thanks, Harsh, for setting the context and explaining what IP is. And I won't have to take care of it. So I'll just be sharing my screen in a minute. I hope everybody has been enjoying the session so far. I hope everybody has been enjoying the session so far. There have been so many interesting talks, and the entire Head Start team has brought together the entire ecosystem, and there are a lot of insights coming out. So today I would, more be talking about why IP and tech transfer is an asset for incubator. Most people believe that, it is just an asset for an organization like an institution or a startup, or maybe even an individual, which is not an entity, but still as a lone innovator, they come up with so many ideas. It could be an asset for them. But how is it an asset to an incubator? One, they should be aware that it is an asset for them too. They should know the right jargon, right words to use, because unless and until they have that, they can't connect with the startups or the entrepreneurs. So they need to know what, like Harsh mentioned, what is the difference between a patent, what is the difference between trademark, what is the difference between copyright and a design. And what is the value of having trade secrets? In India, trade secrets are not protectable, but yet they do have some value assigned to it. So the incubators need to know that yes, something like IP and TT exists. Most of them in India are currently aware of it. They have some policies to support, but these are not part of the performance monitoring parameters which are there for the incubators. Now, in one of the studies conducted by a European group in 2018, they studied 77 incubators across Europe, and they found 30 odd parameters that are frequently used for monitoring their performance. And patent grant, the rate of grant per year for the incubators was one of the parameter as the measuring their performance. And the other one was the number of spin-offs created. Now, creating the spin-offs is more essential from an institute's point of view, but then how is it that this process can also be implemented in India? Instead of having, patent grant rate, we can use the parameter as patent filing. But more than that, since IP is not just limited to patent, it can cover the entire umbrella of including copyrights, designs, trademarks. As Harsh correctly said, that patents may not be the only source of IP for a particular company, or a patent may not even be applicable. Softwares would be protectable by copyright, and that is what is an asset to that particular company. So whatever is the total collective IP filed by all these startups within the incubator is something which is essential and should be one of the KPIs. With respect to technology transfer, the best way of measuring performance from an incubator is to see how many of the technologies which the startups are sitting on are licensed out. Now, during the pandemic, we realized most of the startups are working on so many products. There are so many ideas which they have with them. They may not be working on it. It's just lying at a back burner. They could bring it to the forefront. Or maybe they have something which is applicable in other geographies and they don't want to venture out on their own. So there they can out-license it to different partners to ensure they reach out to those markets. So that is again another parameter, looking at what is the out-licensing rate from the startups incubated in a particular incubator, be it within the Indian jurisdiction or abroad. Now, again, with respect to the institutional policy, it is very critical that whatever IP is filed by the institution gets transferred. Now, there are different modes of doing it, either giving it out to a third party or getting entrepreneurs to set up a startup on it, which is called as a spin out, or the faculty or inventors themselves creating it. The entire process which supports it, the ecosystem which supports it, which the incubator provides, is very crucial. Thus, having spin-outs, the number of spin-outs created, as also rightly observed by the European study of 2018, where they have mentioned that the spin-outs is one of the key KPI for most of the incubators there. So that could also be included. Then what is the kind of facilitation they are providing to the entire ecosystem? Just by saying that the startups have to file IP won't help. They need to give a conducive environment ecosystem to ensure that the startups are aware of it, they know what is to be done, they have the access to the right resources. Moreover, the incubators should set an example by protecting their own logos, their own phrases, their own jingles which they have. They all use particular logos and phrases over the period of time for marketing. All organizations have a particular motto that is reflected by different ways. So try to protect them as different forms of IP. Respect your own IP, then only you would allow others to also follow your example. So that is one way of doing it. The other thing is that since you are incubating startups, you should be doing due diligence to ensure that none of the startups are getting into any risk IP. So when I say risk IP, it means that they should not be infringing on somebody else's right. If they do so, it would be a bad example for you and will bring a lot of negative news for you. So it's better to be careful right from the beginning. Carry out the IP due diligence of the companies that are coming in or the entrepreneurs which are coming in before even they are incubated. Now, once they have incubated, that doesn't mean, that once you have done the due diligence, that's it. It is a continuous process. You still have to continuously do it. You can't stop at one particular stage till they are part of the kitty. They're part incubated in your incubator. You are still responsible for them. Your name is associated with them. So you have to keep on monitoring, make them aware that they have to continuously monitor their IP, and so that nobody is infringing it, neither they are infringing anyone's IP. There should be proper policy framework to, especially for the incubators that are associated with institutions and universities, to ensure that none of the background IP which is generated by the institute goes away freely. Sometimes there are ambiguity with respect to the ownership part, where it is not clear who would own the IP which is jointly created by the faculty and the startup, or a student of an institution and the startup. So all these frameworks should be there. Nowadays, most of the incubators do have such a policy, but again, it is not very clear. Maybe because the incubators themselves are not clear how to go about it, or the institutional policy which is there is not completely, supporting it. So they should have a separate policy from the institute which lays down exactly the rules and regulations to be followed in case of IP ownership, filing of the patents, and what would be the case if there is any ambiguity, or there's no clear understanding regarding any of the points, how that would be resolved. So with this, I would like to end my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions which are there.
Thank you very much, Pooja. It is quite insightful. I've noted down some points for myself also. Just a quick question. For monitoring the infringement, something of this sort, there are any specific key points that you wanted to give, specifically some portals or some specific steps to be followed to check it continuously for an individual, as far as an individual perspective is concerned?
So for a startup, they should, continuously check different portals to see if somebody is kind of trying to use their own product, or they can, also see who is following them on their social media, and then kind of go back and check what they're actually up to. I will tell you a very interesting story, Mudit. It happened with us. We saw that one of the company was frequently following us, and they were not liking our page or anything, but they were following us. So we went back and we checked their page. They were actually trying to, use our own mascot, which is the IP-saurus that we have created. They were using something similar to it. So all these startups should, see, like, we are now using social media so actively. So we should use it also to see who is referring to us, what they exactly following. And if some company is particularly coming back and not liking your post, that means there's something fishy, definitely.
Very, very insightful. Very insightful. Some more questions specifically for you is, please share something about ITTO. In less than a year, or I can say in just 6 months, ITTO has done such wonderful work by bringing network and IP support to startup. Could you share something about ITTO journey so far?
Sure, Madhut. It has been a fantastic journey. We started in March 2020, just before the pandemic arrived. Even though, pandemic has brought challenges for everybody, but it has also got us opportunity. It led us to create, different initiatives to support the startups, understand exactly what they are going through, since we are currently also in a startup mode. So we understand how the entrepreneurs feel, and we can, resonate with how to help them and create exact support system, so that they don't, feel that we are not one of them.
Does it have any limitation in terms of domain? So like, how is ITTO supporting startups and incubators? Does it have any limitation in terms of domain or any regulatory challenge to support external organization or startup? We have in here in India, we have some more technology transfer offices. So how does it work specifically?
I would address the first part, that how we are supporting. So we are supporting them by getting access to Head Start, the oldest ecosystem enabler. We are quite honored and happy to share that Head Start has selected us to partner with them for these various IP services, and we are quite happy to be in this position to help them. So we do help all the startups by giving access to our network, helping them to connect the dots wherever they require any help, be it, partner support, identifying funding schemes, or, even facilities where they can go and do particular, like specifically for life sciences, if they want to do any particular experiments. So we do help them in identifying such facilities as well. So you did correctly mention there are 7 tech transfer offices set up by National Biopharma Mission, and we are one of them. We have a jurisdiction limitation, as in we can only cater to the academic institutions in those particular uh, parts of the country. But for startups as such, we have no limitation. We can work with any of the startups. And for regulatory part, we are into life sciences. My entire team has life science experience. So with regulatory, we have no issues. And you would be happy to know that, we are not limited to life science. So we also help with softwares. We also help with mechanical and electrical, or be it any domain of the technology, we help them with protecting their IP.
That's great. That's great. I can totally relate. I am from a robotics background. I can totally relate your point. There is one question in the chat box from Carl. What is the % of technology commercialization at IITTO from the beginning, and in which sector is it the highest?
So far we have done 4 technology transfer because we were just established in March 2020, and the last year it has been completely slow, especially this last 2 months, April to June, because of the pandemic. So everybody's priorities have changed. So the rate of commercialization or technology transfer has slowed down. But yes, the technologies that we have transferred are right now in life sciences and mechanical domain.
That's great. We have some more questions from the participants, from Dhananjay and everyone. I can take your questions at the ending part during the the panel discussion. Now I'll be moving ahead with our third speaker, which is Mr. Debashish Kundu. So Debashish is a head of business development for Zacko, Europe largest IP consultancies with around offices in 6 countries, having 150 years of experience of innovation thinking. Debashish is a management graduate with rich industry academia experience. What sets him apart is the perfect blend of IT and IP, which offers him a competitive advantage when dealing with technology-enabled solution in IP. He has worked with various MNCs like Genome Biotech, Inatech Info Solutions, Equen Financial Solutions, LT Source Portfolio Solutions, Maxwell IP Services, with substantial exposure to various markets like Europe, US, Middle East, and APEC. So, welcome Debashish to this to this talk. We would love to hear your perspective, and you can in a very different way you can bring it, and then probably we can ask some questions to you at a later point. Over to you, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mudit, and thank you, Head Start, and hello to the entire group of panelists and the startup community. Little exaggeration in the introduction, but I like it. Thank you for that. So yeah, we were established in 1870. And I don't know at that time how much IP was there, and whether it was this much, had this much of acceptance across the worldwide or not. But we have come a long way, and we are celebrating our 151st anniversary this year. So what I would like to talk about is, because my fellow colleagues here have already touched based on the types of IP and the basic forms of IP. Zacko, though the DNA is, of course, comes from a conventional IP DNA, but majority of the cases what we have seen or we have been seeing is, especially for the startups or even for large corporations. So currently we are catering to about 6,000 clients globally. Conventional IP is not enough, whether it is startup or whether it is a big organization for that matter. You need a 360-degree perspective on IP, right? And that is where probably Zacco comes in, or as a differentiator, I would say. So what do I mean by 360-degree perspective on IP? I will just quickly show you very few slides on what exactly I mean by this. See, over a period of time, the world has changed. We all know, because of digitization primarily. So what has happened is, if you go back to, few decades back, you will find that most of the companies used to invest in tangible assets, machineries, land, buildings, stuff like that, right? But today, the entire focus has changed to intangible assets, right? And IP also is a form of intangible asset, we have seen. But it is not just the conventional IP, which is IP per se for any organization for that matter. There are a lot of other intangible assets that comes into the picture, which is also an intellectual property for you, right? Now, being said this, we are kind of a 360 degree. So we cover you from a 360 degree perspective, which means your conventional intellectual property, your cyber security, and also your digital brand protection. All the three aspects. So what we have done is we have created three buckets. We call them innovation assets, digital assets, and identity assets, right? So what are these assets, and what do I mean by this is, see, innovation assets are primarily all the inventions that are coming out of your organization, be it patent or copyright or trade secret, right? Or any manufacturing process for that matter, any working methodology or machine learning or AI today, right? All these inventions which are coming, they are bucketed under innovation assets. What your digital asset primarily holds is all the digital data that you hold inside your organization. It can be anything. It can be your invoice, client's invoice. It can be your HR payroll, right? What happens is tomorrow your client invoices get leaked into the social media, right? Or the Internet of Things, or your data privacy policies, the GDPR requirement, the ISOs. So all this stuff that you are holding inside your organization, inside your database, forms your digital asset. And that is also an intangible asset. And how do you protect it is also important. The last bucket holds your identity asset. How do you establish your identity in the corporate world or in the business world? So for that, you have your copyright. It can be the domain names that you have. It can be the X factor that you call. It can be your trademarks, how you're known in the market, right? The design itself, the sound that you use. So what we have done is we are saying that, hey, your conventional IPs are fine, right? But how do you cover all the intangible assets that you hold inside your organization? What happens today if there is a company, for example, say xyz.com, there is a company. What happens tomorrow if somebody starts a domain name saying that xyzworld.com or xyzjobs.com, and it starts sending emails to your clients? There is a high chance that somebody from the organization might get, phished, I should say, and then reveal some sensitive information. How do you protect that from happening, right? Or suppose you find a pen drive in your parking lot. If somebody drops a pen drive in your parking lot, what are the chances that nobody in your company will pick up the pen drive and plug it into his system to see what is there inside? So it is very, very volatile. For tangible assets, you can have a person sitting there physically guarding your asset. But for intangible asset, the asset that you cannot see, you cannot touch and feel, it is very difficult. So it is important to protect all your intangible assets from a 360-degree perspective, right? So my colleagues today spoke about the IP strategy, right? So what happens if Coca-Cola today, instead of filing a trade secret, would have filed a patent? In 20 years, the company would have gone for a toss, right? So choosing what is the kind of IP that you need, right? Keeping in consideration that the trade secret also should be your risk, that you should keep it secret and it doesn't get leaked to anybody else, right? How do you protect that? One is protecting that invention itself, as a trade secret is fine, but the other aspect of it, however you protect it, if it gets leaked, then it's a problem, right? Then you get into legal battle and stuff like that, right? So you don't want to get into that hassle, right? So what happens is, what we have done, we are saying that, hey, for startups, let us have, because we understand that there is a fund crunch. They don't have that much of funding where we can say that, okay, hey, you go ahead and file in this jurisdiction, you file in that jurisdiction, you break one patent application into 5 different patent applications and then file different patent applications to increase your portfolio, which in turn will increase your valuation of the company itself. What happens if your invention today, so suppose you are a software company and you are aware that in next 4 years time your invention will be obsolete. In that case, does it make sense for you to file a patent? Because your patent grant itself might take about 3-4 years. So by the time you get the grant, your invention itself might have become obsolete. So what is the strategy? Do you file a non-provisional? Do you file a provisional? What is the route that you take for different jurisdiction? You take a PCT route, or you file a EP patent application and then validate in different EU jurisdictions, right? Or you just choose few jurisdictions where you think you have competition and then you just file there. So we try to make you, look at your budget and then say that, okay, hey, in this budget, I think this is the best route that you should follow, right? Of course, you should have a budget for your IP. I mean, there's no question about it. But how to utilize that budget efficiently is also the question, right? So that is where probably Zacko comes in with a different perspective altogether. Not a conventional law firm, but it's a blend of a conventional law firm with cybersecurity and your overall protection of the organization from a 360-degree perspective. So you get covered under one umbrella, under one roof for all your needs, be it conventional IP or be it non-conventional IPs, right? Okay, so that's the future of intellectual property. So for that, what do we do? So our approach or our operating philosophy today is, how do you identify what are your assets? What are the intangible assets that you hold, which are really valuable to your organization? So we help you identify them. Then we manage it on behalf of you so that it is alive, the legal rights are with you. We constantly monitor if there is any kind of infringements that are happening with any of your assets, right? If there is a network traffic, heavy network traffic on a weekend, where you know that our IT team has not pushed any patch, but you can see a lot of network happening, right? What do? If you do not constantly monitor, then you might fall in a problem, right? So if you find that kind of things happening, then of course we take the necessary step. There is a risk mitigation team. We enforce, right, to ensure that you have the legal rights, or what needs to be done at that moment is done, right? So as I said, for us, we have more than 500 IP professionals today in our company. We're working with 800 plus agents across the globe. So any jurisdiction is not a problem. There is a mix of EP, there is a mix of Indian attorneys, right? We have litigation support. So you heard about, you should not infringe into anybody's patent, neither anybody else should infringe into your invention, right? So how do you do those kind of searches to find out that are you really, in control, I should say, right? And at the same time, providing you with the cost advantage. So what we are doing is we are coming up with special startup packages where we are saying that, hey, you don't have to invest big amount in bulk. You pay monthly installments or a subscription model, which will not pinch you. At the same time, you are 100% covered from a 360-degree perspective, right? Be it from cybersecurity perspective, be it from IP perspective, be it from digital brand perspective. And we take the responsibility to ensure that there is no kind of infringement happening and you are following the right IP strategy to increase the valuation of your company, right? All right, so this I will skip. So with this, I think I will stop my presentation here, not to bore you too much, but if you have any questions, I would love to take.
Very
Thank you.
insightful. Very insightful, Debashish. Good to hear you. There are two questions that I want to quickly ask before we go towards the panel discussion. The first question is, what are some of the major challenges that you have seen for Indian applicants, especially for startups, to file patents in European Union? This is a rare thing, but yes, challenges are definitely faced. What are some of them? And
See, it's a simple, straightforward question, and it's a one-line answer. It is only budget, budget, and budget, right? There is nothing else. It's a very straightforward process for that matter. That's why I said, so if you are looking for EU, so today, after the Brexit, I don't know if startups today are aware that UK is still part of EU when it comes to patents, right? So, but they might move out anytime. So this is the right time actually to file an application if you really want to target the UK
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to have the right people backing you up. See, when you start a company, you always go to a CA and you follow a professional approach to set up the company, right? But for IP, we see there is a huge lack of that. Right? We become cost conscious. We go to wherever there is a less money I have to spend to get a patent, I will go there. But where the miss is, there are different styles of drafting a patent application itself. The Indian style drafting, the US style drafting, the EP style drafting is different. Right? So when you go for a lesser cost and you say that, okay, I will first file in my home country, I will file first in India. Then when you go to US or EP with that same application, you might have to tweak it.
Yes.
So you again incur cost there. But if you go to a professional who will probably, keep all these things in mind and then draft a very robust application which can be used in all three jurisdictions, that will be in a long run will be more cost effective to you. Right.
So a follow-up question to this is, as this overall today's event is focused for incubators and today's support organization is AIC Prestige Inspire Foundation Indore. One specific question for this is how Indian organizations, specifically if we talk about incubators, can collaborate with ZECO and bring support to the startups.
Let me also ask in the same breath, Mudit, also if you can highlight in your conversation, Debashish, if there is a cross-border treaty or arrangement where Indian patent can be also treated as kind of a patent in that country as well. Is there some kind of an arrangement which is possible or which is underway, possibly that would be kind of helpful insights?
So see, to be honest, for this, I might have to go to a patent attorney who are actually drafting and working with the team. I'm more of a business guy, so I might not have a direct answer for you. But as far as I have seen, it is completely jurisdictional. So if you want to really have a patent, so that's why, see, what happens is we have kind of developed a product which is called an IP view. It's our in-house grown product. So what we do is we take the whole patent application or the patent portfolio inside the tool, right? And the tool will give you a complete view of the whole world, where all, say for example, where all you have filed your trademarks, in which countries, but you don't have domain names in that country. So today I have filed a trademark in India, but I don't have a domain name with .in. So if somebody goes and take that domain, then it's a problem for you, right? So this kind of coverage is so what the tool will do is the tool will not only for trademark, it will also take for patents, and will give you what are the different jurisdictions where all you have filed, where your competitors are filing, which kind of technology your competitors are currently working on, which direction they are going, what are the kind of technology you should be focusing at this moment, and you give a complete analytical view in one single dashboard to keep your IP strategy very robust.
And how can an incubator can collaborate with ZECO?
See, incubators can always collaborate. So we are a company which is now we have started our operations in India, and we are very active with the startup community. Right, we want to support the startup community at the max, and also take them to Europe in case if they fit to the criteria, because we have a huge network. 800 plus agents. Managing that kind of an agent is not easy. So you can probably cover any country for that matter. Right. So collaboration is very, very simple. We just go ahead and get into a legal contract. And then whatever your inventions are, we have our invention disclosure forms. We have our own questionnaires. We'll send you the questionnaire. We get into the legal arrangement. Then we take it on from there.
But is there a kind of special arrangement with the incubators in terms of the cost implications that can be subsidized or marginalized for startups?
Yes, we can certainly work on it. We are in fact working on that package, as I told you. So for startups, there will be a completely different. We understand they cannot pay. I mean, today, if you go to a company like Schneider Electric, they can pay. If you go to Ericsson, they can pay. But a startup who are in a budding startup, they don't have that kind of money. So that's why we are getting into a subscription model where you just pay monthly. Suppose at 10,000 rupees monthly, 15,000 rupees monthly, and then you get into a coverage, right? So of course we will have a different, silver, gold, platinum, and so on and so forth. And you can choose the plan based on at what stage you are in, and then sign up there. I mean, we are happy to assist.
Yes. Even I'll ask Harsh and Pooja also to let all our participants who is listening online as well as after the event as well, to how to reach out to you, probably to take your services at a later point of time. Now we can move ahead with the panel discussion. There are 2-3 questions that has came into the chat box. One is Indian government is helping startups to take care of patents with a budget of 10 lakh. Is it that is this good enough to protect from all the sides? Anybody of you can take up, probably Pooja, if you can take it.
It's a good enough amount, Mudit, to start with. If you look at the complete official and professional fee, that 10 lakhs is good enough. I mean, you can file so many patents in that. And if you come to us, yes, definitely. I think it is the same case with Harsh as well. So with any of, the facilitators which are there for DIPP recognized startups, this is a good enough amount.
There was one specific question from Dhananjay. Probably my startup has filed patent and examination is under hold by patent officer, and patent officer sends letter to Department of Defense for pre-judicial approval. Should I be worried, concerned, or what should be my next step?
Do you want me to answer, Mudit, or
yes, you can take it, or Harsh afterwards. Harsh can take it probably. Yes,
sure.
Pooja, you can.
We exactly don't know what is your invention about. If it is something related to defense, yes, they would screen it before they reply back to you. But we can only comment after after looking at what exactly the invention is. Harsh, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Pooja. Yeah, I think what you said is right. If the patent officer has already initiated the process where the application has been sent to the DOD and for approval, which means that your invention, whatever details you have filed in the patent application, is or may be related to defense, and it may be it may have sensitive information, which is why this step has been taken. So you may have to wait to hear back from the patent office. And if it does contain any sensitive information that is related to defense, then you may not be allowed to pursue the patent application as well, because anything that is related to defense and atomic energy is actually not patentable. It would be held secretive by the patent office.
Yes, yes, right. There is one question that in the academic filing, the patent is so common, and as most of the incubator are a part of these institutions, sometimes the policy comes as a blockage. Since in academia, almost everywhere patent applications are considered as the host institute, but for the startup, it is not advisable. What is your opinion on this? And how do you see incubators should go on this with the startup? Probably Harsh and Devashish, if you want to take it. Harsh, please.
Yeah, okay. So see, the way IP laws are structured, right? What it says is whoever actually creates the IP will be the primary owner. Now, when it comes to academic institutes where the ownership, or let's say the academic institute acts as an applicant where they own all the assets, right? There is a pre-arrangement that has to be in place for this. So there will be an IP policy within the academic institutes. This is how it works in the industry as well. So if you're working with any MNC, they will have a policy which will say that any IP that would be created while you are employed here would belong to the company. So and it is mandatory. But there have been instances where people have tried to file IP on their own outside the purview of the company. If you want to do that, I would suggest you can go to your legal department, take a no objection certificate so that tomorrow you are not in trouble, right? What I can advise you is the correct way of doing it, but then there are always ways to do it incorrectly, right? So getting an NOC is highly recommended. And when it comes to incubators, like I covered in the presentation, ownership is one part. You have to be very clear. Once you own the IP or co-own the IP with the startup, like Pooja covered, right? Doing your diligence. What if they are already infringing on patents? All those liabilities also you will be accountable for it. So you should be very careful and mindful when you're entering into a joint agreement. So I would suggest this arrangement has to be clearly defined and spoken before you actually implement it, right? What percentage would be owned by the incubator? What percentage would be owned by the startup? If it's a 50-50 arrangement, likewise the liabilities. If there is a liability tomorrow, whether the startup would be willing to take the liability or the incubator. So all these have to be put on paper, discussed, and then you should arrive at an agreement. That's why I touched upon the point of having policies in place. IP policies in place will simplify, the way the whole ecosystem will operate.
Yes, yes.
So Harsh, I think, is it not possible for them also to go ahead as a co-applicant, maybe a joint?
Yeah, they can do that. They can do that, but then you should have an agreement. What percentage would be owned? Yeah. What percentage would be owned by the incubator or the academic institute, and what percentage would be owned by the startup itself? Right. Because what happens is when it comes to cost, right? Initial cost is fine, right? Tomorrow, let's say the startup becomes a unicorn or a decacorn. That's when the issue starts, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
They don't want to give a single paisa to the incubator or the academic institute. So, or let's say, they get litigated. The startup get litigated. They go into a patent infringement lawsuit. They want to transfer all their liabilities to the academic institute or the incubator. Or, because it's a joint arrangement, the incubator or the academic institute will also be expected to bear the cost, and litigation costs, I'm sure you're already aware, are not, do not come cheap, right?
So
Harsh, can I request to either you have it or possibly can get it to in the benefit of the incubators? Do you mind sharing kind of template agreement that we can have with our startups, and maybe we can build upon that in due course of time?
I was having the same question. Yes.
Yes,
yes, please.
Yeah, sure. You can get in touch with me. I can help you with I mean, template would not be, using a template is not advisable.
As a
because,
starting point, as the base
yes,
point.
yes. The key points, yes, probably template can serve as a reference, but then you need to really sit
Customize
down,
it. Yeah.
sit down and understand what are your, liabilities, what are your assets, and then customize the agreement.
So,
Yes.
Sure.
so
Sure.
this also becomes a challenge for them to raise funds, right? So some education will give their labs for the research, and the IP lies with them. But the startup, when they go to the investor, they don't have an IP with them.
Right.
Mudit, can I add a point here?
Yes,
That,
please.
having a, fit one all strategy won't work. It will actually
Yeah.
depend upon what is the whether the startup is a spin out. If it's a spin out from an institute and they're using the background IP, they definitely have to, have the future IP in the institute name. Now, if the institute was not giving any of this, background IP, and it's just uh, a new IP that the startup has created, obviously the institute will have no ownership in it. Even if they have given access to their research labs, they can still not own it because they have not helped in conceptualizing or reducing it to practice. Then again, it would depend if there are any of the inventors from the institute involved. Are there any faculties who are contributing something within their domain? So, it would actually depend a lot on what the institute policy says. They have to correlate and create a policy for the startups, which is totally decided by the incubator, irrespective of the institutional policy, so that there are clear norms. Definitely, like, Debashish said about the funding part, yes, unless and until the startups have the IP in their own name. We have seen so many cases where, they take exclusive licenses. Still, the investors insist that you should have an assignment from the educational institute. Now, they fail to understand, for a startup, taking straight away an assignment is a liability for them. What if the technology fails? What will they do with the IP? At least with exclusive license, the institute is still taking care of the annuity payments of the patent, for example. So, they can't be a one fit all strategy, suiting giving it solution for every problem. We will definitely, have to have a framework with different alternatives and ensure that the incubator plays a key role in creating watertight agreements, supporting the
Yes.
startups and the institutes.
So, Pooja, can I ask you something? I mean, as an incubator, we provide our labs to the startups, and they do and they come and do all kind of experiments and come out with some kind of an invention. And so, let's assume for the moment, that there's no clear agreement between the two parties as of now.
Right.
So at a future date, when these guys, they go out and file a patent, is that an exclusivity we as an incubator we cannot infringe into that?
So, right from the beginning, once the startup is there for the incubation part, I think there should be a clear-cut agreement between the incubators and startups defining the exact responsibilities and roles of each party, and where who also bears the liability in the end. So, for example, if they are using your facilities and they are not even acknowledging that, so that should be clearly mentioned somewhere, that they have to acknowledge whatever facilities they have. Like I also mentioned in my presentation, that, the incubators also need to have a monitoring mechanism to ensure if there is any IP generated in between. If you are an, incubator associated with an institute, definitely you would not like to give away the institute IP. For example, in some cases, what happens is that the faculty members are not even aware that the IP should be in the institute's name. It is just simply filed in the startup name. So all those things need to be worked out beforehand, I would say, rather than, waiting for the last moment.
No, hang on. My question was specific that probably I was not very clear. I mean, I was just about to ask that if, let's say, for example, a startup has been there for about a year and done all the kind of experiments and all, and after going out, then they start to file an IP. How does it not relate to the incubator having a share in the pie?
Because the principle of patent is simple. that whoever has contributed in conceptualizing it or reducing it to practice would become an inventor or will have a role in the complete patent process. So now as an incubator, if you are providing them a facility, you are also charging them for it or taking an equity in the startup. So that way it becomes a work for hire situation where they are paying you for those particular facilities. So as such, you have not contributed towards the inventive step.
Okay, we
Of
need
the
to be clear about
invention.
that. We need to
Yeah.
be explicit.
Yes,
I
yes,
agree.
yes. There is
Agree.
there is one very interesting question from Nikhil.
Mudit,
Yes.
can I just interrupt you and add to what
Yeah.
Pooja just said?
Yes, yes, please. Yes,
To
please.
complete the picture for Dr. Patni. So the way what she said is right. Whoever conceives the idea first or contributes to the conception or subsequent development of the idea would be listed as the inventor, right? And if even implementation aspects are not considered, reduction to practice is not mandatory. It's not a mandatory requirement. It's a good to have, but now it's not mandatory. And if it is being done in, let's say, a closed environment, like an academic institute or in some research lab or in some, let's say, corporate environment, right? It totally boils down to the agreement aspect. So if you don't have, like Pooja said, watertight agreement, say between the startup and the incubator or the facilitator, the original IP holder by default will be the person who conceived it and will be assigned to them. There won't be any infringement or any issues that would arise just because we have used, or the startup has used the resources from the institute or the corporate environment. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think you have pointed, both have pointed out a very important point, that in our own agreements, perhaps we need to make the kind of suitable amendments and get into consensus with the participants to make sure that this is clearly understood and explained.
Right.
Yes. There is one very interesting question specifically about the valuation of an IP. Valuation of a startup is also a very important and very interesting subject. And valuation of IP, how the IP value can add to the overall valuation of a startup or a company. Probably Harsh, followed by Pooja, if you can take it.
Yeah, I think Pooja would be, you can take it related to technology transfer. I will add just a few points on what she
It's okay,
said.
Harsh, you can start with it.
Okay. All right. So valuation, yes, it's a very subjective topic. I would say valuation does add to a startup. The way the startup would be looked at would be definitely a differentiator. So I'll give you an example of a startup that we have worked with in the past. So there's this startup which is based out of Pune. I will not be sharing any details. So the startup that we work with, they are in AI. So they started as a small company in Pune, and then very soon they realized that what they were building had IP assets, right? That's when we came in touch. We had multiple rounds of discussion, and they were really smart because they had come from a background where they had filed more than 10-15 patents in their corporate career, right? Whatever 8-10 years they had worked, they came with a background of filing IP. So they knew the importance, sat down, had a discussion. We filed provisional quickly in India. So the strategy we crafted is we'll file first in India and then decide what jurisdictions to go at a later stage, because provisional will give you that extra time of 12 months, right, to set things in place. So we filed a provisional quickly. What happened in those 12 months is, as soon as we filed a provisional, they realized that they could scale up and grow really quickly by moving to Ireland. They did that based on the IP that they had filed, patent pending status. They were able to generate some attention from the VCs. The VC said, okay, can you move to the US? We'll see what can be done. They moved to the US, set up an office. Things moved fast. This is just in last 2 or 3 years I'm talking. Things moved really, really fast. Just very recently, like 3 or 4 months back, they got funded $400 million. So all this happened because, and in between, coming to the IP part, the strategy that they followed is they decided not to file in India and file directly in US, right? Because they got that traction and visibility where they wanted to protect their assets only in the US. They decided to not to proceed with filing a complete application in India. They took priority to the provisional and filed a US application, which is currently under going through the examination process. But just based on this one IP asset, they have been able to leverage and multiply. And just a week back, I saw that Forbes has listed them in the top 15 AI companies in the world, right, to watch out. So they have been on that list. So the point here is you need to have a clear strategy, and you need to have a clear this thing as to how that IP can be valuable to your company.
Pooja, if you want to add on to it.
Yeah, so I think the question, what was related to the valuation part. So definitely IP is an asset to the company, provided it is valuable. So if they are filing an IP or a patent just for the heck of it, definitely it's not going to fetch any value to them. So when you start doing a valuation of an IP, especially with respect to a patent, there are so many other factors that come into the picture. So one would be to see if there's actually protecting something novel, whether it's a platform technology, what is the market it's going to capture, then accordingly it's valued. But now if you talk about trademarks, if you're not using them, it's just lying, definitely it won't have any value. You're just investing money into it, not generating anything out of it. So valuation is, as Harsh said, it's it's an estimation process. You can't truly valuate something, but yes, it is an asset to the startup in many ways. It helps raising the funds. It helps you in keeping it as a collateral. In US and Europe, you can use it to raise loans through bank. In India, the concept is slowly gaining that pace. I think hopefully by end of this year, maybe next year, banks would start recognizing that IP is also one of the things through which loans can be given. So yes, IPs do contribute in increasing the value of a startup.
Devashish, if you want to add something.
See, IP valuation, certainly, I mean, you may not be able to show it in the balance sheet for that matter, right? But as, I mean, everybody will agree, if you today you want to, if you want to find out a company where you want to put, say, $10 million, which company will you pick? A company which has got IP assets, or a company which doesn't have any IP assets? It's as simple as that, right? So does it has a value? Of course it has a value. There is no question about it. And how you handle those assets is the question. So the basic here, the thing is, how do you monetize is the question here. Whether it has got any financial monetization capability, and what is your team, how they are leveraging, that is the main thing here. If that can be, if you handle it right, it's a huge asset. There is no question about it.
There is one question from Ravi Kumar, probably Harsh, if you can take it. Can there be a case where patent technology transfer from incubator to a startup in returns of an equity share? Have you seen any such case?
Yeah, there have been a lot of discussions around this. In fact, not only between incubators, even startups come with that proposal to me as well, where they say, oh no, you help us build our IP portfolio. We'll have like a arrangement where we can, include or give you an equity. So it totally depends on the agreement or the kind of rapport that you share with the startup, right? So I wouldn't want to, jump into a relationship of equity unless I have known that person or that startup for a few years. So I at least, take that effort and do the due diligence before even making such decisions. And I have been, I have, entered into such agreements in the past and have learned my lessons the hard way. So
yes.
yeah.
So last question to all the panelists, and then probably we'll move to the vote of thanks. What suggestion do you want to give to new startups? How do you use the tools and invest in IP? Should they have a separate budget for this as well as they have marketing for any other head? So the overall last lesson that you wanted to give it to the startup, one by one, starting from Debashish.
Yeah, I would say don't get overexcited with your ideas. Many startups fail to create IP just because they're overexcited. They go ahead and tell everybody, hey, we have an idea like this. That is where it is gone. So you lose on the novelty. Or you just go ahead and type a blog saying, see, everybody thinks his idea is a great idea, right? But let the world decide whether that idea is really a great idea or not. So I think that patience is required. You handle it right. And of course, when it is budget, yes, you definitely should have an IP budget for it. There is no question about it.
Pooja.
So I'll first talk about the budget part with it. Yes, budget is important because unless and until they have a budget, they can't protect their IP. Forget about protecting, they can't even maintain it for a long period of time. So they do need a budget, and most of these schemes which are there, like right now, there is one scheme from BIRAC, which is big biotech ignition grant. They have a head for IP filing and licensing, which is, combination of both technology transfer and IP protection. So they need to know how to budget it. Unless and until they are working with a professional, they can't come up with the correct, budget for themselves. Second, I would tell them is to, do a novelty search, please. Do both a patent and a non-patent literature survey. Don't just stick to one part. Just if you did a non-patent literature, don't be happy that there's nothing in the patent literature. And if you've done a patent literature, please also look at the non-patent literature, because both together would help you in giving you a true picture. So these are the two things from my side. Please do novelty searches and have a budget for yourself. Thanks.
Harsh, last word from you.
Yeah, I think, Debashish and Pooja have covered most part of it. I'll keep it very generic and very simple so that people can relate to it and understand how actually IP works. So building an IP portfolio is building your home or your house, right? You need to make decisions on how much you want to invest and decide on whether you want to focus on quality or not, what is valuable, what is not, because you're going to live in it, right? So if one never pays attention to quality and has built something that is not robust or sustainable, then be ready to face the outcomes of the decisions and the investments. So I would just like to summarize the entire panel discussion with this one final statement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very nicely put. With this, we come to the conclusion of today's session. I will hand over the baton to Dr. Sanjeev Patni, who is a head honcho at AIC Prestige Inspire Foundation, for a vote of thanks. Over to you, Dr. Patni. You are muted, yes.
Thanks, Mudit. Indeed, a very enlightening and enriching kind of conversation today, which itself should hold some kind of an IP right. Let me just give you kind of small example of my own journey into the IP domain. I've had the kind of honor and the pleasure to work very closely with Sam Pitroda and for long years. So I mean, he has been the kind of most rugged and rough player in the domain of IP and IP-based business and patent filing in the US. And at one point in time, I was at his residence in the US. And so he showed me a bunch of documents. I said, what is this, Sam? And he said, these are my patents. And trust you me that he has got more than 110 patents to his name. So that's when I started to get inducted into what is IP and how valuable it can be. And Sam by himself has been earning millions of dollars year after year because of his patent filing here and there, and is still doing well because of that. Having said that, I think in the new relevance, understanding how IP can play a kind of a critically important role in the journey of inventions, and how how the whole process unfolds and can be either beneficial or damaging to one individual or an organization is a very careful trading. Many thanks to all the participants, Devashish, Pooja, Harsh, for all the kind of enriching views and experience sharing. A lot of very, very valuable insights. I'm sure all the kind of viewers have taken serious note of that. And at some point in time, I would also expect that they have a kind of privilege of reaching out to you folks for some kind of even nascent level questions, because the journey of a startup is never with a lot of intelligent head on, but it is always a very a learning experience, very embryonic experience to go ahead and latch onto this journey of doing a startup. So therefore, possibly your own openness to help out people will be hugely appreciated, including to us as an incubation center. Possibly we'd like to access you at some point in time and try and get some of your help, maybe on a kind of professional basis, but more so requesting on a pro bono basis as well. Thanks very much for wonderful insights. I'm indeed so privileged to have participated and shared the stage with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Mudit and
Thanks
Mukesh
again. Thanks
as
again.
well. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pooja and Harsh. Bye.
Bye, Devashish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Pooja.